All right, Cap. I think that some of you are being forced to go through a transition that you're not quite out of yet. I think that this is something that happened to you that you weren't really expecting to have to go through, and now you're in a place where you're not really sure what's going to happen or where you're headed. But the message here is with forget who you are, is you need to be lost for a minute in order to get out of a past situation and into a new phase in who you are becoming. So forget who you are, conditioning falls away, memory no longer defines you, and then between worlds. So this one with forget who you are is saying you are discovering what can happen when you rely less on conditioning, memory, and civilization, and more on heart receptivity and nature. New friendships, connections, gentleness, and joy will be yours. So instead of being civilized about what is happening here, that is no longer who you need to be. And that, I think, is what is going to break you out of a situation where things are gray and foggy and hazy and moving into a new phase of yourself. But like I said, I feel like you're being forced. So between worlds, it says transitions, not being quite out of one situation and fully engaged in another, temporary blindness and no man's land. You're going to be okay, but you can't continue into the new phase of your life being who you were. So you are going to be lost for a little bit. This may not be something that you wanted to go through, but once the transition is made, that conditioning of who you are now is not going to be a part of who you're going to become, right? So I see it as a good thing, but I also see that this is something that you're being forced to do. And it's funny how it ties into this one. So going dark. For the month of October, you guys pulled sacrifice. Now, I think that anger is more constructive than despair and depression. So I actually see these as not as dark. It's dark in the way that you view it because of what you've experienced. But, you can't be in a place of being angry forever over what you have had to sacrifice in order to get to where you are. But let's get into this. So sacrifice, the moon phase is waning gibbous. And the stage, like I said, is anger. Even if I have to break apart, as long as it serves a purpose. The sentence says, I have accepted my duty, and in my release I found freedom. Now going dark. It says there is a strong power in sacrifice. Our fears, our hopes, they are all chains to a small world. Our sense of self is a small petty creature of uncertain resolve and shaky horizons. With sacrifice we renounce our sense of self. We accept to be lost. We accept to be shaken and cut and bruised and hurt and burdened and locked and stricken and despised and gossiped and betrayed and be misunderstood and be left alone to rot, to die, with just words of thanks while the world goes on over our broken dreams. But when we drown our sense of self to sacrifice, we are also a greater person. We are screaming, I exist. I make the difference. We accept a price to pay, and we used our blood and tears as currency. That gives us the right to stand tall. So goddamn right. And you have every right to be pissed over everything that you have had to sacrifice to get to where you are and now being forced to go through a transition in your life. But like I said, you can't stay in that place forever. This is just one of the situations where you have sacrificed so much, but that doesn't mean that every situation after that has to be that way. But like I said, this anger can be very constructive in this case, right? But forget that part of yourself. If this is what you are dealing with, forget that part of yourself in order to make the transition into a newer version of yourself. All right, Cap. Here's your overall, the Two of Pentacles. And I think that this is probably what you're going to have to face. So with the Two of Pentacles, the immediate feeling here is trying to keep the situation going. You're talking about being in the juggling act and needing to make the choice here to drop what you no longer need to continue to keep going in your life so that you're not in this place of doing the same thing. This is also talking about flexibility, right? But, it makes sense to me that Cinderella is like the depiction for this one, wanting to keep the act going of being the beautiful princess and not, the maid that is treated like shit. You know what I mean? But we'll see here. In the past, the Queen of Cups. So that to me may be the way that you were, depending on possibly a person that you were dealing with, male, female, water sign, doesn't matter to me. But the Queen of Cups, I kind of look at that as, if this is how you responded in the past, this may be you being emotionally tied, invested here. Some of you may feel like, being emotionally taken advantage of, because that does happen with her. I don't necessarily feel like this has to do with emotional manipulation from you, but it may be because of another person. That may be making you feel like you need to keep continuing to deal or keep a situation going. That, or you're just trying to figure things out right now, especially when it comes to your own emotional well-being here. But you being the Queen of Cups in the past says to me that for a lot of you, you may have been very loving and very open and very giving. But why is it that you're being so flexible here and trying to keep things going? Wowza. So the Angel of the Night. Now, with this one being in your present moment, this is you coming out of the dark. This is you coming out of a dark place that you may have been in for a long time here, especially emotionally, and now you're finally starting to see the light. It's like having a breakthrough. I'm no longer, in the dark about what is going on and what I'm doing. You're seeing things a little bit more clearly, but it's saying that the situation that you've been in has been, like I said, very dark. But, we'll see here with how it's tied into your environment. The Page of Wands. This is where I think that for a lot of you, there's a realization, I think, with that Angel of the Night being there, where one situation is not something that you continuously need to keep going anymore. I think that with the Page of Wands, this is where, you need to kind of look at taking a different path here, taking the road less traveled, so to speak, doing something that you normally wouldn't do. Because this is, to me, very closely related to the Fool, but we're also talking about beyond a new beginning here, the communication of the things that you want to hear. But I don't necessarily feel like this is about, somebody just telling you what you want to hear. I think it's about you finally getting some news here that may kind of help you break this cycle of trying to keep a situation going, and you're like coming out of, this place of not seeing what you've been doing to yourself. So it's almost like an opportunity is showing up now where you get to go, great, I get to drop this fucking shit and I get to go. That's kind of how I look at that. But I see it as a good thing. This, though, is what is, sticking out to me in terms of what you're actually dealing with. Or what, you feel like you're in or involved in. Yeah. Your best path to follow, the Page of Cups. This is, to me, I'm looking at the Page of Cups and beyond communication of emotions and feeling something new. I also feel like it's like a return to, emotions that you may have been suppressing and having new feelings restored, feeling something again, feeling something new, but like a return to, innocent emotions here. But also going back to the place of being like the dreamer. So I see this as a good thing, especially with the Page of Wands. So I think that, an opportunity is going to open up for you that is going to be like, great, that's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. It may not be something that you've ever experienced before, but it's still saying that, with passion here, there's no reason why you can't make whatever you want happen out of this. But it's all based on you coming back to a place where emotions are being renewed, where they may have been taken advantage of in the past, right? Wowza. Oh, okay. All right. In your environment, the King of Swords. Now, in terms of you, this may be you going to a place where, you are thinking very logically and very rationally, and detaching yourself, from the emotional reaction or emotional responses to feelings, right? So instead of making decisions based on emotions here, you're doing it from a much more practical place. But looking at the angel of the night connected to that, this could definitely be about a person here who has been very good at communicating things to you and keeping you in the dark and making you continue to do this kind of act, which is very possible for some of you. Because, I mean, look at it, But I think that for you, something gets renewed, something gets restored. And it's no longer about going down the same roads anymore, especially with the Page of Wands being there. But we could also be talking about emotions being restored for a person where things have been very dark with them for a while. It just depends. The Two of Pentacles doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. And I'll give you an example. Crystal Visions Tarot describes the Two of Pentacles as the woman being happy that she's able to manage all these things, that she has that ability to be flexible and to keep things going. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. It could be about you and another person here trying to figure out how to keep a situation going right now. But what I worry about here is that there needs to be a return of, an emotional connection here with the Page of Cups. We need to take a different path here with the Page of Wands. Wow, Cap, the hell is going on? Okay. I gotcha. Your hopes and your fears, the Nine of Wands. And that may be the problem. If you're dealing with a person who does not let you in on what is going on with them, and you're kind of in the dark about things, you're definitely going to be coming out of that now. But I think that with the Nine of Wands, there's going to be a part of you that is going to be really tired and worn out when it comes to trying to see the light and understanding, this person that you may be dealing with in your environment. Male, female, air sign, doesn't matter to me. But communication may break through, though, going back to these pages sitting here. But I think that looking at the Nine of Wands, it makes sense to me that there is a part of you that's I've been in this place where I've been trying to keep things going with you. I've been flexible with you, but I don't understand what is going on. I'm starting to get that breakthrough. I'm coming out of the darkest hour here with Angel of the Night. But it's because of this person. But the problem is that, I think that I like the King of Swords in terms of truth and justice. Absolutely. And I love him when he represents, people who are doing research, legal counsel, counseling, people who are able to bring you back to a place of thinking rationally. I like him in that terms, but I don't like the fact that he is emotionally detached. Now, that is the description of the King of Swords, not necessarily air signs altogether. So it may be that it's one of those things where you don't know how somebody is feeling about you. And that may be what you're needing to have communicated here. Especially looking at the Page of Cups. Look, I don't know. I don't know if I can let this in. If there isn't at least some kind of clarity and understanding over how you feel emotionally. Right? And then coming out the Seven of Wands. That, I've always said with the Seven of Wands, to me, it is about defending yourself and defending your position and standing up for yourself. Fighting off the opposition. But I also look at this as drawing a line in the sand and going, this is the shit that I am not going to deal with anymore. This is what I will accept and what I won't accept. And this is you being defensive, but also being very, wary of what other battles you're going to have to deal with dealing with this person. But I do think that there is definitely a strong emotional connection here. I just think that for some reason, they just can't, it's like they can't let you in. I don't understand it. It's I can't express that. But I think that for you, maybe you need to look at your own emotions involving this person in this situation, But it looks like to me that, there is this new road kind of opening up here, right? And this is good. This is good news. This is something good coming out of this situation. There's still that connection here, but I also feel like you kind of get to the point where, look, you're going to have to start talking to me. That's kind of how I feel about this. And then the Ten of Pentacles. And that is what you want. You want stability. Long-lasting stability and security with this time. You need to understand, and this is like you speaking to the other person, that I'm about to give up and walk away. Do you see that? That's how I see her, because she's looking over her shoulder. Do you see that I'm getting ready to give up on this and walk away from you? So, first of all, with Temperance and looking at the Queen of Cups, right? I think that for you, at some point in the past, you may have been really willing to please. Okay, if that makes sense. But I think that you're kind of getting to the point now where that can no longer be. But I also feel like there is a part of you that is trying to keep yourself from getting involved. Because with Temperance, not only are we talking about temperament here, right? And not acting too passionately or emotionally, we're also talking about not wanting to test the waters, keeping yourself in check here. Moderation. I don't know if I can get involved with this. I need to hold myself back here, and I need to keep my inner balance. But like I said, I think for a lot of you, you've been a little bit too pleasing or too willing to please or be too flexible, especially with the Two of Pentacles. But like I said, with the Eight of Cups and then looking at the Angel of the Night, I really think that this is about this person who is not letting you in on what is really going on with them. And the way that they talk to you is in a way where they're like, look, let me explain this to you logically so you understand. But they're not showing an emotional connection. But I think that it's there. I have to be honest with you. I think that it's there. But I do think that, if we're talking about trying to keep a relationship with a person going, you're going to get to the point where you're tired. You're tired of it. You don't know if you can let this in again, especially considering that you're thinking about everything that you have invested in this and what you didn't receive and what you didn't get and what you are lacking emotionally. But I think that the conversation goes to a place where you have every right to be a little bit defensive here and needing to speak up. But I think it's related to the fact that what you want here is something that is going to be secure and stable. You don't want to have to be, in a position where you're guessing what is going on with this person, what is happening with them. But I do think that the communication opens up where there is a belief here that something better is happening, because this I see as good news. I see it as the good news. I don't see this as somebody who's telling you what you want to hear, because I don't think that the King of Swords would do that. I mean, even when you're looking at him in the reverse and he's a fucking dick, he's not going to do that. He would be more of the Five of Swords. So it's not that there's any emotional manipulation here. You may have perceived things that way, but I think it's more because you were willing to be, a little bit more temperate and pleasing. But you're not that way anymore. You can't be. Especially if you're in the dark about what the hell is going on here. How do you feel? Tell me. I feel like screaming this at this person. Just fucking tell me. What is it that you feel? If you want to take this new path with me and you want to try to figure things out, you got to talk to me. You have to. And I think that that's kind of where you're at with the Seven of Wands. Holy shit, Capricorn. What the fuck? You guys got me sucked into that one. Oh, you gotta take a breath. I'm sweating. Oh, I am sweating like a motherfucker. So what happens for me when something really strong starts to come through, I don't get itchy. I don't have little, quirks and things like that. I end up sweating because of the pressure that is being put on me. And all these things just blah, right? And I feel like I'm rambling. An expansion. Expanding yourself and expanding your awareness. I like it. The crown chakra is where you are opening up to the source, and you're opening up to what the source is trying to bring to you, that information, that wisdom, right? And being connected fully. But that connection is what's going to help the situation flourish, or help your life flourish here. And it's going to cause you to expand yourself and your awareness. And again, forget who you are, because it's not who you are becoming. So I look at this as, the universe giving you a signal here that there is a possibility for things to flourish here and expand in your life. It looks good. And I still look at that 10 of Pentacles and I think it may be the beginning of this road. And there may be a lot of things that need to be said about, what you have experienced, what you're not willing to do anymore, and who you are now. But we're still looking at long-lasting stability and security, and that is what you're fighting for. And that is, for a lot of you, directly involved with a person. And then reaching your destination, your light is shining brightly. You're coming out of that dark place, I'm telling you. So you're finally going to reach the destination that you have been seeking, that you have been looking for, that is going to bring infinite abundance into your life. It's beautiful, Cap. I don't like to judge court cards too quickly when they show up for people. Believe me when I say this, and I let people know this with personal readings. If it was something fucking bad, I would tell you. Believe me, I would tell you. But I also believe that, some people deserve the benefit of the doubt. Now, if you're dealing with a straight up asshole, that's a different situation altogether. But everything here is indicating to me that there is a possibility that something could work out with a person. I do think that right now some of you are considering walking away, but you're wanting them to notice that. Because what you're wanting is security and stability, but you're still fighting. You're still fighting. And I look back at that Page of Cups and I think there are emotions. There are emotions tied to this. But you need to feel something and you need to hear something new, and that is what this person needs to know. Fucking tell me how you feel. And that is what's being pushed here more than anything. But finally, out of all of this, you are going to get out of that transition and being stuck in between worlds. You're going to reach that destination. And all of the abundance is going to come pouring in, and things are going to flourish for you.